Welcome to EHM All Access. My name is Harry. It's the podcast where we bring you in-depth conversations with the people shaping life here on Eastern Long Island. Now, every episode, we're going to dive into the stories, the music, the voices that define our community, from local leaders to the musicians you know and love right here on EHM. And throughout this summer, we're catching up with many of the performers taking the stage at the Great South Bay Music Festival. We're going to get the inside scoop on their music, their journey, and what they're bringing to Patchogue this year. In this episode, we speak with Warren Haynes, the guitarist, songwriter, the voice of Gov't Mule, headlining this Saturday at the Great South Bay Music Festival this year. We get into how Mule's sound has evolved, how Warren approaches writing and tone, and why decades of improvisation and collaboration keep the band moving forward. Enjoy our conversation with Warren Haynes from Gov't Mule. It's EHM All Access. It's the EHM Breakfast Show with Harry. Get a chance to chat with Warren Haynes. It's always a lot of fun, and he's coming back to the island. Gov't Mule headlining the Saturday night, July 25th at the Great South Bay Music Festival. Welcome. So, Warren, how are you?
Doing great.
Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. And I was just reading up for this interview, and I was just always find it interesting to see so many different projects. I know you've been busy with solo work over the past couple of years, but of course, Mule coming to the festival. How do you find time for all of this? Has it been tough, or because it feels like you're always working on something?
Well, I think it keeps me going. You know, it keeps me inspired and motivated. I think if I had to do the same thing all the time, I would probably go crazy. But I enjoy bouncing back and forth from different projects, and it kind of breathes new energy into each thing that I'm doing, you know.
I'm looking forward to seeing Gov't Mule actually for the first time. I've seen some solo stuff, but Mule headlining this year's festival, Shorefront Park in Patchogue. And I guess I kind of wanted to start a little bit back at the beginning, and I'm curious. You're from Asheville, North Carolina, and I'm curious what impact that had on you growing up and kind of still to this day, because you were, I guess, surrounded by that music scene.
Yeah, you know, Asheville's a beautiful place. It was a great place to grow up. A lot of great musicians there.
Yeah.
And the scene when I was growing up, it existed, but it was much more underground than it is now. Now Asheville's turned into kind of this bohemian mecca in the South, and people are moving there for the music scene, where when I was a kid, you had to move away to find a music scene. You had to go to Nashville or New York or L.A., but it's amazing to me that Nashville now has turned into this place where people are moving there every day for the music, and it's fantastic.
Well, it's good to see, and it's funny how where you grew up has grown as well down in Asheville. Gov't Mule, like I said, is headlining the process. This started kind of as a kind of a side project. What's it been like over the years to watch this band develop compared to its earlier years?
Well, you know, it's changing all the time, but we're just trying to maintain the mission that we started out with, which is just playing the music that we want to play, the way we want to play it, and building an audience accordingly. As you mentioned, Gov't Mule started as a side project to the Allman Brothers. In 1994, the Allman Brothers worked about half the year, and Alan Woody and myself had been in the band since 1989, and we wanted to do something together, and it gave us the other half of the year to do it. So we decided to do one studio record and one short little tour. That's what we thought it was going to be, and it kind of turned into something beyond that and just kept growing, and here it still is. When
you look back at those early sessions, I'm curious what, I guess creatively, the instincts you had, what do they still guide you now? Is there certain things that you look back on and this is always going to be a part of this band and how we operate?
Yeah, I think improvisation being a big part of the overall picture, combined with well-crafted songs. You know, I like the concept of having both of those things, which is what the Allman Brothers had. It's what the Grateful Dead had. I think it just adds so much more dimension to the overall picture when you allow yourselves the freedom to stretch out and improvise, but you also focus a lot on the songs themselves and strike a balance between those two things. That's maintained a key point in Gov't Mule.
How do you balance the improv and the live energy with the structured nature of studio work too? You seem to be very conscious of it.
Yeah, being in the studio is a little different because without the audience, you're less inclined to be able to stretch the improvisation out the way you would in front of the right crowd. That's why if I had to pick, I would prefer playing live.
Oh,
But I do enjoy making studio records. You can make up for the lack of energy by utilizing the technology and having multiple chances to get something right. But we take a very live approach to the studio. We're not one of those bands
yeah.
who records one instrument at a time. We like to record live in the studio and then add a few things if necessary, change a few things if necessary. But we're trying to capture what the band is capable of on stage.
You mentioned technology. You've watched it change leaps and bounds, I'd imagine, in the past 30,
Yes.
30 years. Was that difficult to embrace at first, or were you skeptical, or how did it go where you were like you kind of started to trust the newer technology that was out there for you?
Well, the technology these days, let's say Pro Tools, which is a major discovery that allows the editing possibilities that are just infinite. In the beginning, I was a little hesitant, mostly because it didn't sound nearly as good as old school analog recording. Now, year after year after year, they get better and better and better at making the digital technology sound good. And there are so many wonderful aspects to it that I embrace that. I just don't like it when people depend on the technology to create music, and that happens too much, especially in pop music, where the technology kind of dictates the music itself. And I'm not a big fan of that, but when you use it correctly, it's an amazing tool.
I would certainly imagine. How do you decide which? I've always wondered this: which songs become the long form jams, and which ones are kind of tighter and more concise? Is that a plan? How does that work in your mind?
Yeah, usually you can tell when you're writing, or at least when you're arranging the songs, which ones want to open themselves up to improv. Sometimes a song might change its mind, a couple years down the road, and
That's interesting.
that's always interesting too. A lot of times the versions that we do in the studio are like blueprints, but eventually they're subject to change, and sometimes you'll play a song for like the 50th time, and then something will happen that takes it into a new direction that it's never gone before. That's wonderful. But again, the balance between just playing the songs as they're written and stretching some of the songs out, I think provides this nice kind of perspective and more overall dimension.
No, that makes perfect sense. How do you do a lot of shows, a lot of different things? How do you keep the band's chemistry fresh after touring and a lot of recordings along the years? How do you keep it fresh for everyone?
Well, one of the ways is that we do a different set list every night. We don't play the same songs over and over, and we'll go a lot of times 4 nights in a row without repeating anything.
That's right.
There are no songs that we play every night, and there are ones that we play more often than others. But that starts really with us to keep ourselves fresh. But the audience, I think, really enjoys that as well, and it keeps people coming back. They never know what they're going to get. A lot of fans will come to multiple shows on a tour. I meet fans that say tonight's my 100th Gov't Mule show or my 200th Gov't Mule show, and it still boggles the mind. But I understand that it would be different if we were playing the same songs the same way night after night.
No, that certainly honors the spirit of when you put this band together to do something different and to use improvisation to help along the way. You've written a lot of songs across a lot of different genres, and I'm curious, is there kind of a common thread in every song you write that kind of applies to every type of genre?
No, I think overall, I'm just trying to draw from timeless influences and
Interesting, yeah.
to hopefully create timeless music myself. The only thing that I rule out is trendiness. I don't want to be influenced by what's going on in the current world today. I want to always be influenced by stuff that came before me and that moved me and it influenced me. And I try to blend the different genres and different influences together in a way that hopefully is unique, you know.
When you start writing, and I'm just curious for you, is it always a riff or a lyric? Where does it usually kind of begin?
It always is different. You know, my friend Greg Allman used to say, there's as many ways to write a song as there are songs, meaning that every song starts out with a different inspiration. Now, a lot of times, you know, I think some of the mid-tempo and slower songs might start from a lyrical idea or a melody. The up-tempo songs might start with a guitar riff or a rhythm pattern or something. But I'm always looking for reasons to change it up and not fall into specific patterns. You know, it's hard. The more songs you write, the more difficult it becomes to not repeat yourself.
I would imagine. What is your favorite environment for writing? Do you like doing it at home, on the road? What's been the best, I guess, best way for you to become productive writing songs?
Writing at home when everybody's asleep, like 3 o'clock in the morning, is usually my best time. You know, you can write on the road, but it's just hard to get into that peaceful zone that you need to be able to let the ideas kind of pour through. But you never know when an idea might hit. So in the old days, I would keep a pad around and a guitar close by. These days, you know, having your cell phone, you can play something or sing something or talk something into your phone so you don't forget it. But it's a constant quest for, I guess, something new, you know?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I've always wondered, too, when you first got involved with the Allman Brothers Band, what was that like to get the call? If I'm not mistaken, you did some backup stuff with Dickie Betts, but then they recruited you to join the band. What was that like for you as a musician from Asheville and continuing to grow as a musician? What was that like to kind of get the call?
Well, I had been an Allman Brothers fan since I was 9 years old, which is before I started playing guitar. I always loved Greg's voice, even before I picked up a guitar. I started singing about 8 or 9. When I started playing guitar around 11 or 12, the Live at Fillmore East record was such a huge record, especially in my neck of the woods. I just became a huge fan of that music. Never imagined that I would be associated with that band, much less wind up in the band for 25 years. But it was a kind of a series of circumstances. I was writing songs for Greg Allman and writing songs with and for Dickie Betts and worked in his band for 2 or 3 years. The whole time taking them at their word that they were never going to reform. So in January of '89, when I got the call that they were reforming and wanted me to join, I was shocked. I had no inkling that was coming.
What was it like? You worked with a lot of different personalities. You mentioned two names there. What was different about them, and how did you approach it to kind of figure out everyone's different needs and I guess personalities is the best way to put it. What was that like for you, kind of figuring all that out?
Well, there's a lot of strong personalities in the Allman Brothers, that's for sure. Each of the new members finding our own place was an important thing because, you know, where most bands reform with new members, there's a definite divide between the old members and the new members. And with the Allman Brothers, I think the music demanded that it not be that. That music was created by 6 individuals that were equally important on stage. And in order for the Allman Brothers to regain that sort of vitality, I think it had to be that way in '89, and so they brought me in as a guitar player, slide guitar player, singer, as well as songwriter, and that was a rare opportunity for someone joining an institution like that.
There's a Bob Weir celebration on the Sunday of the Great South Bay Music Festival, and I'm curious because you got involved with the Dead after the passing of Jerry in the late '90s. What was that like to work? And because I know you were on stage with Bob, what was that like to work with him?
Well, Bob was great. You know, we became such good friends, and I really enjoyed playing music with him.
I would imagine that performance was, I know, filmed, and there's a whole bunch for it, and that kind of led to you working with Phil Lesh.
Well, I worked with Phil first.
Okay.
And it was Phil that introduced me to the rest of the guys, and gave me that wonderful opportunity. You know, when I worked with the Dead in 2004 and 2009, it was just a great experience. You know, to be able to be on the inside of what I consider to be the two forerunners of the jam band scene, you know, the Grateful Dead and the Allman Brothers. What a rare opportunity, you know, and playing music with those guys in both camps, completely different from the other. You know, I remember Dickie Betts telling me one time that he was a big fan of the Grateful Dead as well, but we were talking about the difference between the two, and he said the Grateful Dead relax and wait for the magic to happen, but the Allman Brothers are impatient and force the magic to happen. And I thought that was an interesting outlook. You know, both things being beautiful and amazing. That was a big difference between those two bands.
How did you use that to kind of determine the personality of Gov't Mule then? I'd imagine that influence when you went back to writing for Mule and working with different musicians, I'd imagine that changed you a bit as well.
Yeah, every project that I've done somehow influences what I do in the future, even if it's minimal, and that even carries over to all the bass players that we worked with after Alan Woody passed away. I was writing songs for all these different bass players, and their influence kind of made its way into the future of Gov't Mule, and rightly so, and in a really positive way.
You mentioned earlier that every set list is different, and we know that. How do you build the set list? Do you plan them out? How far ahead of time do you do that? What is that process like?
These days, I usually do it about 3 days in advance and reserve the right to change it right up until showtime. You know, it's based on what did we play last night? What did we play the night before? What did we play the last time we were in this town? And what do we feel like playing? What do we think this audience is going to enjoy? And you combine all those things together because we want it to be different each time we come back to any certain city. But you never know until you start the show if it's connecting or not. You know, it's rare, but occasionally we'll just throw the set list out the window and just punt and take it as an audible.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I'd imagine that does happen on occasion. What's your favorite part of the live experience? Is it the crowd, the improv? What kind of keeps you going from that live experience?
Being able to improvise in front of an audience that not only tolerates but encourages that sort of thing is an amazing opportunity. You know, we wouldn't be able to do what we do in front of anybody's audience. We've built an audience that is part of the ride, you know, part of the journey, and it allows us and kind of pushes us to create improvisational music that we couldn't create in a rehearsal or in the studio, you know.
How do you, as you've been doing this a while, how do you kind of keep growing as an artist at this stage? How do you make sure that you are always still learning and changing it up and growing? Because I'd imagine you've been doing it a while, the set list change helps, but just from a perspective of different records, whether it be solo or for Mule or any project, how do you make sure you force yourself to kind of continue to grow?
Well, from the very beginning, Alan Woody and I talked about in Gov't Mule how We wanted every album to be different than the one before. We wanted every album to reveal influences that had not been influenced in the past. It gets harder and harder to do that.
The older
you get, but musicians sign on to be students for life. If you stop learning, you might as well quit. But that's kind of the whole thing. And it doesn't happen as quickly or as often as it happens when you're 16 or 21, but every time you're around inspiring musicians and artists, something happens that you would never think of on your own, and you carry it with you.
I'd imagine, too, you get a chance to work with so many new talented artists. Are there anyone you've played with recently that you've been surprised by and are just really enjoying?
Well, we did some stuff with Larkin Poe recently that was really fun. There's a lot of cool music coming out these days. I think there was a few years, there was a time period, maybe even 5 to 10 years, where I was a little worried about the future of real music.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a lot of cool stuff on the horizon. People are listening to old music again and not just listening to the trendy music of their time. And I think that has to happen in order for the future to embrace the concept of what music can be, because the music doesn't have to be just wallpaper and, whatever's trending at the moment. People are now discovering all over the world music in every genre from every region. And it's just great. Like I heard some music the other day on a public station, and it was music from Iceland. Wow. And I was really knocked out with the way, I don't remember the band name, but it sounded like Crosby, Stills, and Nash, but then they were blending like classical violins and stuff. And it was just a really unique blend of elements. And I think, wow, that's what it's all about, is taking the music into the future.
It sure is. Warren Haynes, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. It's Gov't Mule headlining the Great South Bay Music Festival, Saturday, July 25th, GreatSouthBayMusicFestival.com. We can't wait. And so many great shows ahead for you. Thank you so much for your time, Warren. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.